You're listening to Just a Couple of Jerks with me, Paul Winstanley. In this week's episode, I'm talking to MVP superstar Panu Saukko. Panu's been an MVP now for a long time, and he pretty much is really involved still and active and thoroughly enjoys getting involved in the MVP program and community. We chat about Finland, the country that he comes from, and surprisingly enough, about snow. We also chat about where his name comes from and more in this week's Just a Couple of Jerks.
That's like for my problem is that now I've been living in this all Finnish environment and then need to switch to English like within a couple of minutes.
Okay.
That's I was a little bit afraid of that. How do
Okay.
I look like? And sometimes I might need some time to think about things. And what was that word?
Yeah. Well, I can try and help you along maybe when things like that, but I appreciate it because, obviously I'm not going to flip to Finnish speaking for this.
So let's see.
It's not my skill set. So yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. Okay, so Panu Saukko, is that correct pronunciation again?
Yeah.
Welcome to Just a Couple of Jerks
Thank you.
podcast. Yeah. So Panu, tell us about your last name because it's an interesting one. We were just chatting about it before we kickstarted.
Yeah, it is actually an animal. So it's in English the otter. So I like to swim and play around with water. So I was really, really happy when Microsoft released for Windows 10 this the otter theme, which has like 20 really nice pictures about otter. So that's one thing you really need to have on your Windows 10 background.
The otter.
Yeah.
So that's the direct translation then?
Yeah,
from,
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's obviously the family name. Gone back generations, so it just originates from that. And I know back in the UK, we have names that relate to previously back in the day, roles and jobs that people did, but is that so your name originating from an animal? Is that a standard thing that happens in
Well,
in
it depends.
Finland?
Like we have like with Finnish last names, we have this kind of like places or where the house is. So we have like Alatalo, which is like a house which is lower, and then we have Ylätalo, which would be a house on the higher ground and stuff like that. So we have those kind of names quite a lot. And my father is coming from a small village which is called like Otter Village. So,
Okay.
So I suppose that has some kind of effect for the last name.
Definitely, yeah. And so you're from Finland. If anyone wasn't aware of that, so whereabouts in Finland do you live, and is that where you kind of were brought up?
No, like I was brought up at a city called Rovaniemi, so it's by the Arctic Circle. So now I've been living about 30 years at Helsinki area. So there's a second largest city of Finland, Espoo, which is like not a city at all because it's just like a big suburb of Helsinki. There's a couple of nice anecdotes about Espoo. Even though it is the second largest city, I still haven't found a street sign that will direct to Espoo.
Brilliant.
nobody wants to come here. So
Well, you can't find it.
yeah, you
There's no
just
sign.
yeah. So that's like it shows how important our city is.
Brilliant. Okay. So, how many? So, what's the population then of the city that you live in? I mean,
So Espoo is close to 300,000.
okay. And so Helsinki, how many?
So the Helsinki is maybe about 600,000. So
Right.
this Helsinki or Greater Helsinki would be a little over 1 million. And there's a couple of other neighboring cities like Espoo, Vantaa, which is pretty similar than Espoo is. It has like close to 200,000.
So my knowledge of Finland is pretty poor, as you can tell. I know very little about Finland itself. So the population of the country is about
Close to 6 million.
okay. Okay. So when you grew up, then you're in a very small village, are you?
Well, like first my 10 years we were living, both of my parents were teachers. So we lived in a small village which was like 20 kilometers outside of Rovaniemi, which is up north. So then, when I was like 10 years old, we moved to Rovaniemi. It is like, at that day, it was like 30,000 people. And the climate over there was much better what we have here at Helsinki area because we used to have a real winter. I really like winters, so I don't mind snow at all.
No. So like when you're growing up, then so when you say real winters, I mean I can't imagine it compared to what we have here. So I lived in the north of England when I grew up. So I live in London now,
Yeah.
and when I moved to London, the existence of snow it just stopped almost. I mean, you could possibly go, okay, global warming, etc. But we do get more snow up in the north in Yorkshire. But I can't imagine what it is. The comparison must be huge. The difference must be huge because. So, explain a winter when you grew up. Then, would it be X amount of months at certain
Yeah.
temperature? Yeah.
So
How long
normally,
would it go on for?
yeah, so normally we might get first snow like November, and then what we get, it will melt away around May, maybe. So I think like currently at Rovaniemi there might be half a meter of snow still.
Right.
So winter it's like pretty long, and
So that first snow, would that snow then stay? So November through till May, you would have it the whole time, or would it clear or and come back? Or?
so normally maybe the first snow might melt away, but then like let's say uh, December, early December, then you would have this snow, and it would then last at least to April. So you would have like snow maybe half a year.
That's brilliant. If you like snow, it's fantastic. I mean, I
Yeah,
love snow. I mean, here, it's they've had some snow, and 3 days into it, they're going, I just want it to melt now. Had
yeah.
enough of it.
The problem is that if your society is not ready for the snow, because you need to have a correct infra, so you can handle that, and all your streets are plowed, and you have good tires on your cars and stuff like that, and then you could do skiing and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. We aren't we aren't ready for it at all. In fact, when it comes, we're kind of shocked at times, and you're thinking, well, it's the winter,
Yeah,
you know. But obviously, the infra is not stood up, and it's not as you say. So it's a tiny bit of snow, and it's absolute chaos for us. So you mentioned skiing. Now, I've seen some pictures where you say, okay, off to so and so now, and it's like you're off to do some training or whatever, and you're hopping on the skis and off you go. Is that like a decent form of transport for you, effectively, or is it just that you're keen, you love it, and okay, opportunities to do it? It's kind of like we jump on a bike here and go cycling.
Yeah, so now I think I need to define the terms. For me, skiing is always cross-country skiing,
Right.
so it's not downhill.
Yeah, because
So
you'd have to get back as well, wouldn't you?
yeah, and then nowadays, like at Helsinki area, this winter was super bad. I think this might be or is my first winter ever that we didn't get any snow, or it was like 1 day. So this Helsinki area, this we don't get as nice winter as we would get here up north of Finland. But then this winter, people in northern part of Finland, they are complaining it is too much snow, so it is like close to 1.5 meters snow. So that's get a little bit boring if you get too much snow.
Yeah, yeah. But you just hop on the skis and you're just off. Yeah, you don't really care.
No, well, you need to have a ski tracks. So where I live, um, there are a couple of places I need to go. So if we would have a really nice winter here in Helsinki area, I could almost from my door go to skiing after what would I say, maybe a couple of 100 meters would be the closest ski tracks, but normally they are not that good, so I drive by car a couple of kilometers with a better ski tracks. And then at this winter, there was only one good ski tracks, and it was maybe like 15 kilometers away. So they used the snow from the ice hockey rinks, and they store snow from last winters, and then they have those snowing machines, which will create more snow if it's just freezing. But for this winter, there weren't too many nights where our temperature got below zero, so they couldn't make much snow.
Right, right.
But this snow is pretty big business. For example,
Yeah.
that Lapland is quite popular. Also, tourists from UK, a lot of those are going to Lapland, and personally, I think it's like one of the best places to be in the world in late March or early April, because then you normally get a pretty nice weather. So you get a sunshine, you get snow, and then you can do different kind of snow activities. But you have to like being outside. So that's one key thing.
And so I take it that outdoorsy thing, being outside, is that part of the culture, or is it people into that? I mean, yourself, for example, the things that interest you are that obviously computers is one of them, but beyond that, your interests are in a bit of skiing.
Yeah,
Do you get all the sports and the activities that go with that? Do you get involved in all that? Do you enjoy all that sort of thing?
yeah. I like to stay outside every day. When you have a couple of dogs, it helps you. And then, like when I'm traveling and I stay the whole day inside, so with one of those conferences where you stay at the same hotel where the conference venue is, that you don't have a good opportunity to be outside. I don't like that for many days. I really then miss to go walking outside, but walking outside within like streets or middle of the city is not that much fun than being outside and in the nature.
Exactly. Yeah. So interestingly, then the situation at the moment with the lockdown and the coronavirus, how is that impacting you, and how's Finland dealing with that?
We have had quite strict quarantine rules, so um, most people are doing remote work, like within IT. I'm kind of lucky that I have this kind of small office for just me, which is like a 15 minutes walk from our house. So I've been walking to this office and doing work normally. But the schools have been closed, and most bigger companies, they have quite strict rules that it's remote only. So I suppose that's like the normal way within Europe currently.
Yeah, yeah, and when it comes to going out, I mean, we have a restriction on us that we can go out for essentials, for food, medicines, and also we can go out once a day to exercise. Is there something similar set for yourselves?
No, we don't have that kind of the. I think it's a little bit different because the density of the population within Finland is so much less what you would have like within UK. So if we want to walk outside here in Finland and to have a 2 or 3 or 5 meter distance to another people, it's really easy to do so. So one of the big things that is what we miss this year because Corona is 1st of May. Because 1st of May in Finland it's a big party, really big party, and we have had this kind of tradition that 1st of May we go to the one of the biggest parks within Finland. So it would be like Hyde Park in London. Like our park is not that big, but all the people, maybe 50,000, 60,000 of the people who go there to 1st of May, starting from 8 a.m. and we start drinking champagne. So that has been, so we had this kind of picnic in the park, and there's like tens of thousands of people. So this year there have been strict rules that you cannot do that, but still I think quite a few might try to do similar kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a real shame what's happening, and lots of these kind of things are being abandoned, and things are changing, and people's uh, you know ways of life have changed, and there's possibility of we've talked with other people on the podcast about how remote working has been adapted by the companies that they work for, and how that could potentially change after the lockdown eases. So we're seeing some of the big banks in the UK, for example, saying that, you know, why do we need all this office space?
Yeah.
People are working from their kitchens now. So, lots of these attitudes could change. Um,
But
how does it
yeah, so I was going to ask you that before coronavirus, how like within UK, how much like IT pros were doing remote work versus going to the office doing the same thing?
Yeah, yeah. There's
Because
a lot of office based.
yeah,
Yeah,
because what I've seen like in Finland, many IT companies they didn't like remote work as much before Corona, and I really couldn't find good reasoning behind that. Why they many times they decline that. You can
Yeah.
maybe have a maximum 1 day of remote work, and it cannot be Monday or Friday. So these kind of rules, but I suppose that kind of situation will change quite rapidly because of this quarantines.
Yeah, it never really made sense, did it? Because I think a lot of it is people like to see people there
Yeah,
and they like interaction. I understand that, but when you go into an office, so I'm going in as someone who's implementing something, and I might need to speak to so and so, might need to do that. But when I'm doing that in an environment where I'm doing it across Teams or across Skype or whatever, and the people are in the office and I'm connecting remotely to systems, I'm thinking, why am I in this? Why am I there?
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing here. There's a lot of people go into the office. So now capacity's been ramped up. It may change and attitudes may change. And, we can cut down on some of this rush hour stuff that go, as I say, I live in London. The last thing I want to do is jump on the underground or on a train and be pushed up against the door with
yeah,
everyone else, and try and avoid that. And so we may have to change all this. So hopefully, this will ease that sort of thing. And obviously, we've seen a reduction in the CO2 emissions
yeah,
worldwide, globally.
yeah.
Are these just suddenly going to ramp back up, or should we factor that in?
And normally, like this, if you need to spend like 1 hour for commuting into your work, so that you're gonna waste like 2 hours per day for something that it's quite difficult to use really effectively.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, makes total sense. So we shall see how that goes. For yourself, Panu, you're a certified trainer, and you have been for a long time. I had a quick look, and I think 1995 was the first time you were a
Yeah,
Microsoft certified trainer.
yeah.
Does that take up a lot of your day to day training, because you're working as a consultant? So obviously with training, you could flip to Skype, or I'm saying Skype, sorry, Teams. I'll get up to date.
So nowadays I don't do training that much. I used to do much more, like maybe 10 years ago. Now I only have trainings occasionally. Last week I had a training with Teams, and I can really understand those teachers who say that if you have to train with Teams, it takes so much more energy than doing normal classroom training, because you don't have this kind of interaction. You don't know what kind of level you are talking about. You don't see from the faces of your attendees that am I speaking like too fast, too slow? Is it too difficult? If it's too easy, how they can do those exercises? And when you lose that interaction, it's a different ball game. And in many ways, it is much easier to have this classroom trainings than Teams trainings.
Sure, that's interesting actually, because obviously the schools have had to adapt and
Yeah,
change. So my daughter is heavily working on Google Classroom, and they have this homework portal as well. But that interaction goes, and so she might be asked to do some science and just gets some worksheets, and it's crack on with that. And it becomes harder for them. They're learning on their own, but that ability to ask questions goes. I mean, these are lessons where there's no teacher at the other end as
yeah.
such on a camera, so it's very, very different, very isolated. Um, and it's interesting to see to hear what you said then about. that. So I take it you were on camera, and were the other people on camera, or were
No,
they?
no.
No,
And I didn't have my camera on only for the start of the training.
like an intro. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that loses quite a lot then, doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah, you lose
Yeah.
a lot of this interaction, and from the faces you can read a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in many cases, like with teaching and learning, I think it's quite important also. And then if you think about normal classrooms where you might have like 20 or something kids in your class, so it is so much faster if you like wandering around in a classroom and check how your kids are doing the exercises than then chatting with each one of those, that how are you doing, do you need any help or stuff like that. So it is so much slower. So the UI of this physical presence is pretty good.
Totally. I think that was one of the key differences with our MVP summit this year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's missing something. Even though we had some great sessions, we still lacked that interaction with the people running the sessions, but also with each other as well,
Yeah.
which is a massive difference. So going back to a younger Panu then, you're in this small sort of village, growing up, and what's your dreams? What are you what were you wanting to become when you got older?
um, I don't know if I ever had this kind of specific plans.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm the same.
I did like to do sports, and also I liked computers quite a lot when I was like 10 or something. I was pretty good in math, so school was pretty easy for me normally. But maybe like in the high school years, it was quite easy to select to go to study at the technical university. And one other thing that was the key part of that is that the city where I lived, they didn't have a good basketball team. So when I came here at Helsinki area, there was much better basketball teams to play for. So that was the one of the key criterias when I selected the university.
Right, because you're quite tall, aren't you?
Yeah.
How tall are you? In
So I used to be a little bit over 2 meters, but now I'm just a little bit short of 2 meters.
Well, you shrunk.
Yeah.
Is that just as you're getting older? Is it?
Yeah. Um, so part of that is maybe when you get older, you might shrunk a little bit. And then
Yeah.
also, I have this arthritis on my back.
Okay.
So
Right.
that like stiffens my backs. So, and it also like maybe that's,
Causes you to
yeah,
change your. Yeah. Yeah. Nah, I have arthritis in my fingers,
yeah.
all my fingers. So I find it very painful typing, which is not ideal when you work in IT. To be honest,
Yeah.
just certain fingers, I'll get like a burning sensation. So yeah. Did you get much pain from your arthritis then?
So when I first got it, I was like late 20s. So I was
Right.
wondering that why on earth like my elbow, my like ribs hurt, and then like when I sneezed, it hurt a little, quite a lot, and I was quite tired. So it
Mm.
took some time before I actually got diagnosed. So I was too lazy to go to the doctor. So that was like my mistake. So then it runs in a family. So that's kind of this kind of bad diseases that
Gets passed on. Yeah. My mum's sister struggles with arthritis, so I think I'm starting to get it in my knees. I've done some cycling sportives, we call them, some events, and the last one that I did just about a year ago, up in the north of England, and my knees were absolutely killing me. About this was 80 miles, so about 120 kilometers, and about halfway into that, my knees were just dead. But I carried on, and it's one of those things where you go, okay, it's just old age or whatever. But now I can feel, on a night time, I'm clicking my knees as I'm in bed, and then I wake up and the body just feels tired. Through that. So, I mean, I'm hitting 50, so I'm kind of getting it a lot later than you did. So, I suppose you have to adjust your way of life a little bit.
Yeah, but then I would advise you to get a blood test, go to a doctor, because what you get with arthritis is this kind of a low, what is this, inflammation within your body. And currently there are pretty good medicine for that, which will take away that. But you need to know more what is wrong with you. But for me, if I would have the same medicines I got now, I would be in much, much better shape. And my back wouldn't be as stiff as it is right now, because just the medicines are so much more effective nowadays.
So do you have to before the coronavirus, would you have to go for massage, things like that to help? Or would that not have any impact at all?
Yeah, so in our family, the only ones who got massage are our dogs.
Right. Okay.
But, it would help, but normally I'm too lazy to go there. So, like, my problem is that I don't get much pain with my disease, so it's this kind of silent on the back. But when it goes like years and years and years, and then it has some kind of effect. But like for the daily life, it doesn't affect that much. But what I see that I need to do some kind of exercise like every like couple of days, otherwise like my back starts to hurt.
Sure. Okay, so to go back to, I will have to get checked out. By the way, my wife keeps telling me so. she'll say, "Oh, you've been told by someone else to get it done. Now you're going to do it. You're not listening to me." But yeah. No, I totally understand. So go back to when you were younger. Then you went to you say you went to a technical college, or is it a university? Or so was that was to study computing then?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So what were you doing there in the computing field? Is it programming or?
Not much, because what I did do some kind of programming with those home computers, but at the university level, I wasn't really into programming. So I don't know. Is it a shame to say that? Yeah, I'm in computing and I don't like programming.
No. So when I grew up, I got an Atari VCS. That was the first thing I was ever exposed to. So I was playing Combat and Pac-Man and Space Invaders, all this stuff at home. Then my dad bought my brother an Acorn Electron, which was like the BBC computer.
Yeah.
So it was like the sister computer to that. It was less processing power, whatever. And that was geared around programming, but I didn't want to do that. My thing was, load some games on it.
Yeah.
And I did a little bit of programming on it because it helped me. We had at the school we did computer studies, and we had the BBC, so I was able to type some things in at home, put them on a cassette, save them, bring them into the school, and load it back up there. And the programming language, the BBC Basic, was the same. So that kind of worked. But apart from that, maybe every so often I would type in some listings from a magazine that would never work.
Yeah.
And I just get bored of it because it didn't work. It was like some people might have gone, okay, right, I'm going to try and work this out now. I'd just go, have a look at it. No, it looks right to me. And that would be it. And even then, when I went to university, there was my course was a mix of business studies and computing. But the programming element of it, it just wasn't for me. I couldn't grasp it. My mind wasn't working in that way. So I don't know. I've never been a big programmer. I can go in and do PowerShell, things like that, and that's fine. But I'm not someone who will be just cranking out code all the time. So was that the same for yourself?
Yeah, pretty much. I think what I like about programming is to solve problems. So that's a really interesting aspect, and I like that. I like this kind of trying to figure out what would be a nice way to solve this task.
Yeah.
But
and I get satisfaction when I actually program something and it works, and I'm like, oh, great, cool. And then I start thinking, I can do more.
Yeah, but then
I never get to it.
The boring part of the programming is that when you have to take care of all those different scenarios, so is the input correct, formatting, and how about all those bugs, and do you handle these kind of special cases? So you have this kind of problem solving.
Error checking.
Yeah, so that is like 10% of the work, but then this kind of 90% is this kind of more manual kind of stuff, which is not that interesting for me. And then if you don't do that, then your script or program is not that good. It's because you need to figure out all those error checking and logging and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I find that bit quite tedious.
Yeah.
And I go, I've missed this. I've now got to program. And sometimes if you don't get it right from the start, you have to kind of reinvent the code at times because you've completely missed a basic thing. And it's like, oh, dear.
Yeah, it was like this kind of funny story that I've done some kind of programming, and then 10 years ago, I made this kind of VB script for school that they had this kind of Unix database where all the student information were, and I made this kind of VB script that would automate creation of the AD accounts and all the home directories and email accounts and stuff like that, and make sure that all the usernames are unique, and when database and student is deleted, then delete that user account and stuff like that. So, and I was really, really surprised that I got a case 6 months ago that from that same customer, they are still using that. And I need to debug that. And I was looking at that code, what the heck I was thinking about in this one. What is wrong with that? Come on.
Yeah. Oh God. We can look back on some of those past things very easily and criticize them. And probably at the time, you make things work for the purpose, don't you? And then you look back on it and go, oh dear, that was horrible. I was chatting with Morris Daly about a similar sort of thing with his PowerShell tool, and he said, things could be done better, but I'm not going to go and change it and start all over again.
Yeah. So then, because those scripts, they are not that big, so it shouldn't be a huge issue. But then think about this kind of bigger programs where you have like tens of billions of lines of code, and you need to make changes for some kind of key elements. Who dares to do that?
Yeah. Have a look at the code behind Config Manager.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's still got the SMS code in.
yeah.
Who's going to go back and reinvent all that?
And
No
the
one.
same problem is with all the banks and stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you went to the college, then were you starting to dabble in a bit of that programming, or what course was it? Did you say earlier? I can't remember.
Yeah, so like at the university in the late 80s, early 90s, so it was we need to learn like C, and then we have Ada and different programming languages, and there were a lot of course, Unix machines and stuff like that. And but actually, I started to work with Microsoft products quite early. Also, I was working part-time as a PC support while I was working.
Okay.
So then I started to do this PC management related stuff, and started using like Microsoft LAN Manager. I don't know. That wasn't very popular because at that day, like Novel Network was much popular. But in Finland, LAN Manager was quite popular because there were a couple of like resellers, local resellers who were pretty good at selling those to innocent customers. So that started my journey with like these Microsoft management products.
Okay, so you finished up at university, and were you still doing this kind of PC support job, and then
Yeah,
that
so
led to more things.
when I finished university, then I went to the ICL.
Okay, yeah,
So that's a UK company, used to be.
yeah, yeah. I did a bit of work with ICL back in the late
Yeah,
1990s.
and
Yeah.
my first job was ICL had their own network adapters. So when Windows NT 3.1 was in beta, my task was testing ICL network adapters that they would work with NT4, NT 3.1.
Yeah.
So
Did
I,
they?
so yeah, it was kind of boring stuff because you get a new beta version like every 2 weeks, and then you install that new version and test that driver. Did it work? Yes, it worked. Okay, now it's gonna be next release. So I wasn't there pretty long. Then I went to the company who did uh, IT training. So I was one of the first guys who started to train NC. So then I created training material for those NC 3.5. Was it like at that time? And I had a lot of those trainings.
So that's where you kind of got into the MCT side of things, yeah?
Yeah, and at that point they weren't really good like Microsoft own material, so we created our own material. So then came those mock materials. So then, depending on the customers, we might use our own or used mock material. And then I started doing these SMS 1.2 tradings also.
Right. And were you dealing with SMS at that point as well? So were you using the product and then creating the training material?
Yeah, well, actually, I didn't create SMS training material because I used mock material for that.
Right.
But I think my first glimpse of SMS was when I was still working at ICL. The guy who was on the next cubicle from my space, he was beta testing Hermes, which became SMS. So that was like,
Very early on then.
yeah, very early.
And so you were using it. What was it? Version one? Your first experience with SMS?
Um, I think it was version 1.2, I think.
Right. So you're starting to get that knowledge very early on. I mean, I didn't use SMS at all.
Yeah.
I was config manager 2007 was my first exposure to the product. So you're building up your experience of that and using that on a day to day basis. Are you in your job? Are you
Um, at that
becoming a
point,
bit of an admin with it?
at that point, it wasn't like day to day. So um, our training company, we weren't that big, so we didn't use that internally. So it was more like for the training, and I had a like test lab
Right.
from
Okay.
that early years. But
So
then,
you've got a test lab from the very start. Yeah.
yeah,
So you what have you got a server thing at home and you're building it on that, or what
normally
was your
it would,
original lab?
yeah, it would be at work to have like
Right.
we had a workstation
A
there, so
playground.
yeah,
Yeah.
playground from there.
Okay. So when did you start to build that experience? I mean, you've got quite a wide breadth of experience. I think System Center Stack, weren't you? Were quite the different products of that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been working with Ops Manager quite a lot. Uh, I was working also with Service Manager, but that has gone away. So I don't know like anyone of my ex Service Manager customers who are still using that. So that's kind of a deceased product in my opinion. But with other System Center products, mostly Operation Manager and Config Manager.
And you've been an MVP for quite a while.
Yeah, since 2005.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I think it was the last time we were all at the summit, and we had to stay stood up for the number of years. Kathy was calling out the number of years that you've been MVP for, and yeah, I think were you the last man standing in the room at the time? Obviously,
Yeah,
Steve Thompson has been.
yeah. Steve has been longer.
Yeah, I think he's 20 odd years, isn't he?
Yeah,
25 years or
yeah.
something. And so you're 15. So how did that all come about?
um, uh, I don't know because that MVP is this kind of a strange club because you never know what is needed to get in,
Yep.
and you never know who like proposed that you should be an MVP. So that's difficult to know. But at that point, I was doing a lot of training about config manager. I was like quite active on like MCT news groups and stuff like that. So the market was much smaller. So if you think about how the market share and of config manager has increased for the last 15 years, it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it was more, we'd say niche, I suppose, back then. A smaller market, less people using it. It hasn't
Yeah,
grown in the way that
yeah,
it has now.
yeah.
So you're one of you know these people who are dabbling with it. So very early on, so you're becoming quite in depth with it, quite expert level with it, and so you get added to the program. But was it a case of an email arrives in your inbox and you're like, oh, or were you notified that you've been nominated? Because now we get the notifications that someone's nominated you, and I think from memory even tells you who that person is.
Um, I didn't get this kind of email that I've been nominated. I get an email that I've been selected, and for me, um, I really didn't know what MVP meant, and uh, at that point, I think the number of MVPs globally were much smaller, and within Finland there weren't many of us. So I didn't have many peers to talk with. Okay, what is this MVP program? And
Yeah.
so I made this kind of stupid decisions that first couple of years I didn't go to the MVP summits because I didn't
Right.
know
Fair
what they
enough. Yeah.
were. Yeah,
Yeah.
but when I went my first one, then I understood that this is one thing that you don't want to miss. So that was like one of the key things. But I think Microsoft has been quite wise to create this kind of MVP program, and I think it has been really beneficial for Microsoft.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And for the people who, like ourselves, who are in the program,
Yeah,
it's beneficial for us as well. And then for the customers that we deal with as well. I mean, one of the bits of feedback I get when I work with customers I work with is, uh, it's great you were able to ask questions.
yeah,
There's an issue. Is this a bug? An upgrade I did last year or whatever, there's a problem, and that was looked at as there's a bug. We know about it. Can you get us some logs? And that enabled them to get more of an insight on the root cause of the problem and fix it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, which is beneficial for everyone, isn't it?
yeah. And I think in many cases, customers are using the product in ways that Microsoft hasn't intended the product to be
Yeah.
used.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Of
And
course.
sometimes for good reasons and sometimes for
Oh
not
yeah.
so
Yeah.
good reasons.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So interesting then. Now we have this cadence release, we have the service model. So back in the day when you'd finally gone to Seattle and Redmond, and uh, the product itself didn't change as frequently and as rapidly as it does now.
Yeah.
So how to the feedback that you gave, well, we see change. We can, if we suggest something now, we may see that in the TP the next month,
Yeah.
and then in the next release. So how did that work? Did you have to kind of go, oh, we'd like this to change, and then sort of 3 years later it might?
Yeah, so it was really, really frustrating. For then, if you made some kind of idea that, okay, this would be a really, really cool feature, and then they would say that, oh, too bad, it just missed this config manager 2007, but we will have a new product within 5 years. so, so if you just wait for 5 years, you might get that.
Gosh.
Well, honestly, it wasn't as bad because some of those service packs you could have small changes, but or like R2, R3 kind of releases, but still this kind of cadence, you submit some idea and get some kind of response, and you see the real product. Now it's just amazing. And first of all, when Microsoft told us that, okay, we're gonna switch this kind of 4-month cadence, I suppose like every MVP was against the idea that no way you're gonna work that out. It's gonna be so buggy. Nobody would dare to install that, and Microsoft has proved us wrong because
Well, they have with Config Manager. I think Windows 10, I'm still questioning that at times.
yeah, I totally agree. But now, even when I go to the customers and need to upgrade a larger config manager environment, I don't stress it at all.
No, no. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, so the first upgrade to this is before I was an MVP. The first upgrade of Config Manager 15, whatever it was, to the next, I actually killed the customer's dev environment with that upgrade. Not me personally killing it. Obviously, the upgrade killed it.
Yeah.
There's my disclaimer. But and I posted a message to, I think, the MMS email forums, and Aaron Kachowski jumped on it and was like, "Oh, we've not seen this." And it was great. It was like, oh, great, brilliant. So from a very early day, Microsoft were interacting on the current branch model because they'd gone, we haven't seen this. This is interesting. We want to know more. And they were trying to get that feedback from people who are having issues. And so those sort of things on the upgrade path were caught very early on, and they learned from that. And now, like you say, if you're going to upgrade now, you don't even think about it, do you?
Yeah.
You know, you kind of go, have you got a good backup? Yeah, great. Okay, off we go.
Yeah.
And you kind of just do it.
Yeah, and it's now because each new version, it brings a real value for the customers. And I think the coolest part of this config manager is that it doesn't matter what kind of customer you are. If you are totally on-prem customer, there's still value in each of the new releases. And because this upgrade mechanism is so reliable, then you don't need to stress upgrade much. So with a little risk, you get quite a high value. So the decision to install the latest and greatest config manager is pretty easy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So the cadence thing, like you say, it was the initial thing, a little bit of resistance, people going, oh, yeah, it's going to be buggy. We're not sure about that. But my thing about cadence is keeping up with it. How do you find that?
Yeah, so that is a problem. Personally, what I do is I normally try to test all the technical previews. And with the technical previews, you can try those new features. Normally, if they are just released, quite often there are some bugs over there, but still you can see how they look like, what they do. You can comment on those, and then they would be in better shape for the production releases. So when you test those with technical previews, it is not a big task because it may take maybe half a day or day to test its technical preview. So then when the production release is coming, then you know that, okay, I already tested that, and then you can check, okay, does it still have this same bug, or is there any new changes from what I've seen from the technical previews? But
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I mean, it requires dedication, though, doesn't it? It requires you to be, so like you say, half a day could be half a day, could be a day. You've already got your day-to-day job going on, but you to kind of step back and go, okay, now this is really. I know Jurgen and Kim used to have that thing where it was the first to light up all the lights.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Kim. He said, "Oh, I've not had time to do that recently." So it's easy to fall behind, isn't it? Then
Yeah.
and kind of go, okay, I've now got to get up to speed with this, and that can build up. So you feel you're in control of that at the moment with the TPs coming out. You're on it. You do it. You've got the time.
Yeah, so I think that's a little bit easier. With Intune, it's sometimes, I would say, a little bit more difficult because with Intune, those new changes, they are not as exact. You might get a tweet that, okay, new releases have been deployed to your tenants. Then when you check, you notice that, okay, they are not still there. They might appear in a couple of days. So that's also quite important, trying to keep up what is happening with Cloud World, what is happening within Intune. Then there are new changes with Azure AD that you should follow. So for me personally, those cloud services is maybe a little bit bigger challenge than config manager.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, and where with your customers then, what's the split between cloud-based management and on-prem? Are you getting a lot of people shifting to cloud that you're managing?
I think I really love this Microsoft new endpoint manager strategy, saying that earlier they were a little bit hinting that this cloud-based management is way to go, and everybody should go to the cloud-based management of their endpoints, um, also for all the Windows devices and servers. But this kind of new idea that part of your devices might be managed by config manager, part of your devices is managed by Intune, and then quite a few are co-managed. And the customer just needs to figure out which one of those three, Intune, config manager, or co-managed, is the best way to manage which subset of their devices. I really love that idea, and I think it solves many problems for the customers. So now it's up to the customers trying to figure out what best makes sense for them. What I've learned is that this one size fits all, you don't have that in IT in many cases. You have different scenarios, and then um, trying to use cloud management for those devices where it doesn't make any sense, it is not beneficial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so many customers I've been to where I've kind of looked at them and gone, "You're not cloud ready at all. You never will be. There's so many barriers that are going to stop you from doing this."
Yeah,
And before co-management came into being, it was like, there was this conversation about config manager is dead and the
yeah,
marketing that was incorrectly done or not done in the right way by Microsoft, which they've corrected since, and rightly so, because the message has been put out a lot better.
yeah,
But it was kind of like, well, what are your options? Because if config manager is going to go, then you can't. There's so many things you can't do. But what I've found is in the UK is that we have a lot of people who are looking now at cloud who weren't before,
yeah.
and because they were slow to adopt, maybe Windows 7 getting from that to 10 was a priority first. Is that the case in Finland as well? People are shifting to cloud because they've now got the ability to do that?
Yeah, I think what I've seen is that many customers, what they are thinking about is to have their devices co-managed, or then they have a subset of their devices managed by Intune. They might be only Azure AD, and then those might also be co-managed. But this kind of that all the devices, all the Windows PCs that they would manage only by Intune, I don't see that much. I see that with this kind of smaller, newer customers, which are using only cloud services.
Yeah.
But for
It's
this
easier for them to kind of adapt it,
yeah,
isn't it? It's less challenge
yes, and
for them.
for them, I would agree. If I would start a company right now, I wouldn't have any kind of on-prem infra at all. But
Yeah, no, exactly. That I think that's the way forward, isn't it? But with the new businesses,
then,
excuse me, sorry, I'm
yeah,
coughing. Yeah, I think that's a good way forward for new businesses where they can adapt to it very quickly and avoid on-prem.
yeah,
And in situations like we have now with Corona, you've got everything managed, and it makes it so much easier to achieve to assist them in this internet based connected world.
yeah. But what I really also see that many of those on-prem config manager environments, they need to enhance the config manager by using different cloud services because it gives them really nice benefits. Cloud Management Gateway is one of the greatest example. All those customers who have implemented that before Corona are now really happy that
Yeah,
they did that.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, one customer I was working with, that's on their list of to dos, but it's not happened before the lockdown,
Yeah,
so that provides quite a challenge
yeah,
for them to get those devices talking through the gateway.
yeah,
And it's something that can be achieved over time, but as of now, it's a blocker, it's a barrier for them because they're not quite there yet.
yeah,
But some people spun it up. I mean, that's one of the things we've seen. There are lots of blog posts about it. Rob York talking about the split tunneling, things like that, where people have spun it up very quickly to manage their devices. So the demand for that has increased massively.
yeah.
So we may see some further tweaks and improvements in that area over time, based on the usage. It'd be interesting to see how that evolves. And with the cadence, the service model,
Yeah.
we have that ability to see it in a shorter period of time.
But one of these kind of small details, but earlier it used to be that when customers had VPN connection, they wouldn't allow split tunneling at all because it was a security risk. But now with the Corona, quite quickly many made a decision, okay, yes, we will allow
Yeah,
split tunneling because otherwise the capacity will run out so fast. So
yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It goes back to that conversation around home working and remote.
yeah,
People suddenly have to change, don't they? It's go, okay, let's consider this now. Is it viable? Let's do it, sort of thing. So what's next for you, Panu? What are your plans in life?
um, um, as you can see that maybe I don't have this kind of 5 year planning much.
Nah,
Um, I think like I'd like to like keep doing what I've been doing, so that requires this kind of constant learning about the new stuff. And what I like about IT is that you need to learn every day. So that's why there's always new products. Sometimes it makes you feel that you don't know anything because when you read
yeah,
one page, you only figure out that you need to read two more.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's a constant thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Learning. and getting frustrated with it at times. I do. Might read something and I go, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I've now got to go back and work it out and ask questions, whatever it is. And that's a challenge. And I'm hoping that you're the same with that, and it's not just me
Yeah.
being useless. No, you're stupid. I understand it all. Is what.
And then it's always like you have this kind of products, and then you have the customers, and they have their problems, and then you need to adapt. You need to decide, okay, which product will be beneficial for this kind of case. So again, this one size fits all kind of thing, it doesn't exist. So you need to adapt and try to find what would be benefits for this specific case. And also, like within IT, it requires quite a lot people's skills. So it's not just technology.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it keeps you busy
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, keeps us young. Keeps our minds young. Keeps it working, ticking over. I think.
yeah. But I don't know how's like what you would say. What is like the status of IT business within UK at this coronavirus?
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I've had customers who have put lockdowns in place, change freezers, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Projects being pulled, all this kind of thing. And that's impacted me. I've had impacts where I've not been working with particular customers because they've put these measures in place. I think things are starting to turn now, slowly. Um, and it all depends, really. I mean, we're going to be locked down at least till the end of May, if not longer. I mean, end of May may be optimistic. I don't know, but business has to continue, doesn't it? I mean, we
yeah.
can, you can't just stop everything. It's got to carry on. So I don't know if that was the same for yourselves. Did you have customers suddenly go, okay, we can't do this. There's too much risk involved, or
I think like the biggest thing is that some companies they are now in survival mode. So where they just skip everything that is not vital for their business,
yes,
and depending what kind of business they are, some have bigger and some have smaller problems, and this kind of like to make improvements to IT for some companies they don't care about that currently. They are waiting for better times to do that kind of projects. So I suppose Corona has affected IT business also, but maybe we are not as severely affected like restaurants or traveling, which is like losing close to 100% of their business.
yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much the same here. I think it's okay. A project might be pulled here. This might be put on hold for a short while, but as you say, keep the business going, avoid risk, avoid breaking anything, and then they'll swing back to it June, July, whatever it is, and kickstart again.
Yeah,
Um, and once they can get a feel, once they know everyone's working and business continuity, as we call it, is in place,
yeah,
then they're happy, and then people can work, and then we'll think about those things down the line. I think it's exactly the same situation as for yourself, really. Um, well, Panu, it's been a real pleasure chatting to you. I can't believe we've been chatting for how long? 75 minutes or
yeah,
so now.
yeah.
So we'll wrap up. But before we wrap up, if people want to get in touch with you via your socials, etc., where do they need to go?
I think Twitter would be the best choice. So just look my Twitter handle, so with my name. So that's easy to find. With other social media, I'm not there very active, but on Twitter, that would be the best one.
You've not got your Instagram account going yet, no?
Yeah, I got it, but no posts. So
My
I'm
wife's
just
told me I
starting.
need to have one. I don't understand Instagram. I've never used it, so that's probably why. But I was the same with Twitter. I resisted Twitter for a long time. I didn't understand what it was, and I never. The first time I looked at it, I was like, oh, I'm not too sure about this. Looks a bit tedious. But it was only really through hearing people saying, "Oh, it's great for getting the latest info on, Config Manager or whatever." And
Yeah,
okay, let's check it out. And it was like, oh wow! And through that, meeting a lot of people in the community has been essential for that.
yeah,
I don't know where Instagram would add value. I really don't know.
yeah. I think
So
it needs to have this kind of critical mass of people, and I don't know because about Instagram, but how much like business related stuff, like technical stuff, is within Instagram. My personal opinion might be that uh, Facebook and Twitter would be better.
yeah,
And
see, I
then,
don't even use Facebook to be honest. I try to avoid that. I did have a Facebook account years ago, and I got sick of reading about people's kids.
yeah,
Which it's like that's not what I'm there for.
yeah. But like on Facebook, I'm quite a passive. There are a couple of like config manager or into
Yeah,
related groups I'm part of, but I'm not very active on the.
yeah. I just use it to promote the blog post, to be honest, and the podcast. I put those on the config manager groups, but beyond that, that's
Yeah,
really about it. And Instagram, I'm not going to be pouted into a mirror taking a selfie. That's it's not my interest. So, but yeah, Panu, thanks ever so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
yeah. Thank you. It was so much fun. So
Yeah,
thank you
it's
for.
cool to get to know about you a
Yeah,
bit more. Really interesting stuff. And thanks for taking the time.
no problem. Okay.